Hello, I'm Jon Dee. It's good to be with you at the Net Zero Festival. For those of you who don't know me, please let me introduce myself. Here in Australia, I run the RE100 Renewable Energy Initiative for the Climate Group and CDP. I also host the Energy Insights program, and I run the Smarter Future Sustainability channel on Twitter. Now, it's safe to say that Australia's government doesn't enjoy the best reputation when it comes to climate issues and going net zero. So, the Net Zero Festival has asked me to tell you the good news on climate action here in Australia. As you'll see in this presentation, many of the good things that are happening in Australia are world leading, and I'm going to talk about some of those case studies today. I want to start by talking about an Australian company called Tritium. Operating out of Brisbane, Tritium make the world's best fast chargers for electric vehicles. If you use a Tritium 350 kilowatt charger, a car like the Hyundai Ioniq 5 can be recharged from 10 to 80% in just 18 minutes. If you ever get a fast charge for your electric car on European motorways, there's a good chance that you'll be using a Tritium charger that was made in Brisbane, Australia. That's because Tritium is one of the main suppliers of car chargers to the Ionity network. Tritium chargers are also now being rolled out in the UK. There are 12 chargers here in this photo from Tritium that were recently installed in Rugby for the GridServe electric highway. When it was installed, this was the largest high-powered motorway charging site in the UK, and it was using Australian technology. Tritium's chargers are now in use in 41 countries, and millions of fast charging sessions have been delivered. That stopped 9 million litres of petrol from being used. No doubt that figure will continue to increase as we all switch to electric cars. Next up, I want to tell you the good news on renewable energy in Australia. More than 2.9 million Australian households have already installed rooftop solar panels. That means 30% of Australian households now generate their own solar power. But it's not just the Australian public that are supportive of wind and solar power. The good news is that business is also supporting renewable energy. Here's a TV ad that shows how one Australian company promoted renewable energy on primetime Australian TV.
When we clock on, it's there, ready to squeeze the sweat from our burnt brows. While we're trying to earn our bacon, it's trying to turn us into it. Oh, but times are changing. Soon the sun will be working for us, because in 2020, VB will be brewed with 100% solar. So next time the sun is making you hot, just remember that it'll also be making you a cold one.
That was a high-profile TV advert for the VB beer that's made by Asahi here in Australia. Asahi is not the only high-profile company that's going 100% renewable over here. These major brands are just some of the 110 companies that are members of RE100 in Australia. Like all of RE100's members, they're all going 100% renewable by a set date. At a global level, RE100 is run by the Climate Group and CDP. As I said, here in Australia, I coordinate RE100 on their behalf. To date, Australian companies with a market cap of $650 billion have joined RE100. When I think about it, it's incredible how many major Australian brands are going 100% renewable before 2025. What's exciting is that some of their renewable energy initiatives are very big and they're creating real change. These major solar farm projects involve companies such as Asahi in Victoria, Westpac in New South Wales, and Sun Metals in Queensland. This 124 megawatt solar farm at Sun Metals provides 18% of the electricity for their zinc refinery. Next year, this plant will be using 1,300 gigawatt hours a year of electricity. By 2024, they expect to cover 86% of the refinery's electricity with wind and solar power. With their upcoming green hydrogen project, Sun Metals is well on their way to becoming Australia's first metal refinery to be running on 100% renewable electricity. The single biggest renewables project in Australia right now is Sun Cable. In fact, it's one of the world's biggest renewable energy projects. It's a project that is backed by two well-known Australian billionaires, Mike Cannon-Brookes, the co-founder and co-CEO of Atlassian, and Andrew Forrest, the head of Fortescue Metals Group. Both men are major advocates for renewable energy. As you'll see in this video, the project aims to deliver dispatchable renewable energy from Australia to Singapore, and it plans to provide up to 15% of Singapore's energy needs.
Sun Cable is building the world's largest renewable energy infrastructure project, the Australia-Asia Power Link. Sun Cable is harnessing Australia's abundant solar resource, switching on this untapped energy source to help deliver affordable, large-scale, dispatchable, renewable energy. By integrating existing technologies like solar PV, batteries and high-voltage direct current transmission, constructing 800 kilometres of overhead transmission from the solar farm site near Elliott in the NT and 4,200 kilometres of undersea power cables from Darwin to Singapore, the Australia-Asia Power Link will set a new benchmark in how to sustainably cater to the region's growing energy needs. The $22 billion plus US project will be capable of providing a significant increase to Darwin's electricity supply and up to 15% of Singapore's electricity needs. The project will unlock opportunities for the Northern Territory to become a $40 billion economy by 2030 and assist Singapore as it works towards meeting its renewable energy ambitions outlined in the Green Plan 2030 and 4-switch policies. The Indonesian government has recommended the submarine cable route and granted permission to undertake the subsea survey, and the project has major project status from the Australian and Northern Territory governments. With over 750 kilometres of the route already surveyed, Sun Cable will survey the remainder of the route in early 2022. The project will reduce CO2 emissions by 8.6 million tonnes annually and see billions of dollars invested into the economies of Australia, Indonesia and Singapore, employing thousands of people, supporting regional manufacturing and unlocking significant economic growth opportunities for the entire Indo-Pacific region.
With its LNG and coal exports, Australia is already a major energy supplier to the world. The Sun Cable project will show the world that Australia can also export renewable energy to other countries. Andrew Forrest is also behind a big initiative to establish a green hydrogen export industry from here in Australia. He's also joined with former Australian Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull to form GH20, an international body to promote the use of green hydrogen around the world. It's not just companies and well-off Australians that are doing their bit. Australian state governments are also being very progressive with renewable energy and storage and the move to reduce emissions. New South Wales has just announced that it will reduce emissions by 50% by 2030, and it's in the process of creating 5 renewable energy zones that will generate up to $20 billion of private sector investment. But it's the state of South Australia that's the best example of positive change that's being enacted at the state level. You might remember that South Australia put in place what was then the world's biggest grid battery in partnership with Tesla. To show you more, here's a video on South Australia that's just been released by the World Economic Forum. To close my presentation, I want to quickly give you 3 examples of how Australia is leading the way in reducing the impact of food generation and food waste. In a part of South Australia where conventional crops cannot be grown, Sundrop Farms has built a world-leading hydroponic facility that uses sunlight and seawater to grow tomatoes. The 20-hectare facility uses more than 23,000 mirrors to capture sunlight that's directed to a central receiver at the top of a 127-metre power tower. All the water used for irrigating the crops is piped from the sea and is converted into fresh water using a thermal desalination plant. It's a highly controlled environment, which means the farm is weatherproof and it's also climate-proof. It's also shown that it's possible to take non-agricultural land and grow food on it. This facility can supply up to 15,000 tonnes of truss tomatoes every year to Australia's second biggest supermarket chain. My second example is a major breakthrough that promises to massively reduce the methane emissions associated with livestock. This breakthrough began with a Canadian farmer who realised that when his cows were down by the beach, they were healthier and more productive. After realising they were eating seaweed, he fed that seaweed to his other cows and got positive results. After reaching out to his friend and scientist Dr. Rob Kinley, it was discovered that the seaweed also reduced the cows' greenhouse emissions. Australian scientists then set out to find which type of seaweed would get the best result in reducing emissions. As part of that research, they came across a seaweed variety called Asparagopsis. Their tests have shown that when you put less than 1% of Asparagopsis into cow feed, you can reduce methane emissions by up to 90% or more. Asparagopsis feed is a game changer, and it's going to be brought to market under the Future Feed brand name. 25 million tonnes of seaweed is grown every year, so there's no technical reason to stop this product from being scaled up. The impact on reducing emissions from livestock could be enormous. In closing, my final case study is a very exciting initiative that removes the impact of food waste from major buildings and facilities. As we're all aware, some food waste gets composted, but most food waste ends up in landfill, where it generates a significant amount of methane emissions. An Australian company called GoTerra has designed a modular insect farm that turns food waste into a high-value food resource for pets, poultry and aquaculture. The unit is the size of a shipping container, and within it, fly maggots eat all types of macerated food waste, including meat, citrus, dairy and biodegradable packaging. After 12 days of eating, the maggots are put to sleep and turned into animal protein and soil enhancer. New maggots are then put back into the system and the whole process starts again. This unit is silent and odourless and reduces the emissions of sending food waste to landfill by 97%. Lend-Lease installed this unit in their ultra-sustainable Barangaroo development in Sydney. As more people return to work after COVID, this unit will be able to process up to 5 tonnes of food waste every day, or about 150 tonnes of food waste each month. It really is a game-changing solution for reducing food waste emissions from major buildings. Now that brings my presentation to an end. Whilst there is a lot of concern around the world regarding the Australian government's national stance on climate change, the reality is that many Australians are joining you in moving the world towards net zero. I'm Jon Dee, thanks for watching, and if you do get a chance, please check out my Smarter Futures feed on Twitter. And if you're a large energy using company, do check out RE100 and join the many companies that are going 100% renewable. Take care and stay safe.